You're live.
I'm live. I'd like to thank you for coming back. I hope you did come back. I don't know how many people were viewing us because I don't have my phone set to that, but we're back. We're talking to candidates for the Budget Committee. It's kind of like a marathon here. We just made it through on time with the Board of Selectmen, so we have our committee candidates, Budget Committee candidates sitting here now, and I'm going to let them go through and introduce themselves briefly to you, and then we'll continue on.
So introduction and a statement, or just my name?
Just who you are.
My name is Carrie Douglas, and I'm running for Budget Committee, a re-election to the Budget Committee.
Scott Taylor, running for the Budget Committee, been in town since 2008.
We can add that one. How long you been here?
Over 10 years.
Okay.
I've been in town for over 10 years.
John David's son, and we have been in town for 2 years.
Okay.
Corey Flint. We just moved here last July.
And I'm Jen Burke. I am running for re-election for the Budget Committee, and we've been here since 2005.
Okay, so we have 2 people that are running again, crazy people, and 3 people that haven't been on the board before. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. We need 3 people out of these 5 candidates that are here, with the addition of George Lambert, who was unable, due to a health issue, to be here today. He has a very good excuse for not being here, but he is not here. So we have 3 people to pick out of this group of people. And we also, again, have some really wonderfully qualified people. We were very lucky with our selectmen's group, and in a town this small, to have 6 people running for the Budget Committee. It's a wonderful thing. So I want to thank you all for running, and thank you for coming and talking to us today. We have kind of a good platform here between the LCTV and the What's Up page. You're going to have a lot of people that know your name when they go to vote. So I have some questions for you. You've been in town for, wow, a really long range of times, different range of times. And the Budget Committee has had a lot of visual this year. It's been talked about more at the water coolers and at the Litchfield Food Mart and at Romano's. It's been discussed. So I want to ask you, why do you want to be on the Budget Committee, Carrie? You're the chairman this year.
I was the chair this year. It was a very interesting year with the special election we navigated. So it was the first time in town that I know of. But I thoroughly enjoy it. I really enjoy, community service, working. I mean, I've coached in town, various teams, Cub Scouts, very active. And as a former construction project manager, 6 years ago when I first ran, I felt that this would be a good opportunity to use my skills and training as a construction project manager to benefit the town in a variety of ways. And we went.
But you picked Budget Committee.
I picked Budget Committee because I'm an engineer by training, construction project manager by trade, and we did budgets all the time, and I thoroughly enjoy it. And we got the fire station through, and it just helped to see the impact that even as a Budget Committee member you can have on the benefit of this town.
Scott, why do you want to be on the Budget Committee?
Well, Diane, it goes back to the typical, you know what, if you're going to complain about something, then you need to get involved in it. So certainly taking a look at the way that the taxes have been going up since 2015 is going at a pace that's more higher than what I'm comfortable with, and just taking a look at the latest town report and seeing what the property taxes coming in, and the school budget is actually more than what we're bringing in as property taxes. I think now is the time that people need to come in and act. You know, people that are familiar with Andrew Cutter's work on the Budget Committee, really digging in line by line and rolling up his sleeves. If you take a look at my Facebook page for Scott Taylor for Litchfield Budget Committee, you'll see that I'm already rolling up my sleeves and putting in some good examples.
That is something that you can access on Facebook by bringing up Scott's name. John.
Yeah. Great question, Diane. And I would say it's about giving back to the community. You know, a lot like Carrie said, even though we've only been here a short period of time, I've already been involved in coaching my daughter's teams. And I'm a big believer in giving back to your community and getting involved. And I think my background allows me an opportunity to not only understand how budgets work, but also being a servant leader is very important to me. And so I want to make sure that my voice is the voice of the people in town, listening to what they have to say, asking the right questions, and ensuring that's represented across all parts of the budget, because that's how we're going to find a place where we look to maximize our tax dollars for every citizen, for every student, for every teacher.
Thank you, John. Corey.
That's a good question. Essentially, I just want to have an opportunity to be a part of the community, to understand, where the tax dollars are being allocated, and have an opportunity to possibly be a part of the process that helps to find out, or to allocate the spending. I'm also concerned about the taxes in this town. I've lived in quite a few different states and all over the country, and this has been the highest impact so far as taxes for me, and I want an opportunity to go in and see, if there's any place we can save the town money and save the citizens
A
money.
ton of money would be good. We like that.
the more the
Jen,
better,
you're
absolutely.
coming back. You're
Yes.
trying to come back. You want to come
Yes, I am
back.
trying to come back. So,
Okay.
so I ran for the first time 4 years ago for a 3-year term, and then I ran again last year for a 1-year term. And I decided that I wanted to run again because I really feel like I still have more to give back. The makeup of the current board right now is still with relatively a lot of new people, so I think some experience is important there.
I agree, yeah.
My background in business, I think, really helps me with the budgeting piece. I'm a huge believer in community service. My family and I do a ton around town on different committees and coaching and boards that we're a part of. And I really think John hit the nail on the head. It really comes down to being a representative for the town, right? So I have a ton of experience with what my children have experienced going through the schools and what I've experienced as a community member. I can consider that, but that can't be what I make my decisions on, right? I've got to make my decisions based on what's best for everyone. So I think I bring that
What-
level-headedness.
I'm going to kind of bring this question back down this way, but what is it that you do for a living, Jen?
So currently I work as a district human resource manager for the Home Depot. I support 11 stores, 50 salary leaders, a business of $250 million and 2,000 associates.
Okay. Corey?
I work for JetBlue. I'm a captain of the Embraer E190. Been flying for them for 7 years and about 25 years in total.
Okay, thank you very much. John?
My background is in education, so I spent about the first 15 years of my career working in public school districts in 2 different states. Like Corey, I've got background in different states, different budgets, tax impacts. Currently, I'm in the private side of education. I work for Discovery Education.
What does Discovery Education do?
So we're part of Discovery Communications, Discovery Channel, Animal Planet, Shark Week. Everybody loves Shark Week.
I love Shark
We
Week.
take a lot of that great. That's probably number 2 behind Shark Week for sure.
You really don't want to go check out the woods by Jay's house.
Yeah, we take a lot of that content and work with schools and districts across the country.
And Scott?
I run a sales engineering team for Oracle, so we obviously have to do a lot of P&L as far as budgets are concerned, and then also this past year we were able to launch a new service, making sure that the revenues coming in match as far as the inflows going out, things of that nature, and it became very successful this past year. So plan on implementing that in the budget committee.
And Carrie?
Well, it's a very impressive slate here.
It is extremely.
I am a 2-engineer household, but I have taken time off for the past 10 years to raise my kids. So in the past...
Time off?
Time off.
Oh, whoa, 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 whoa,
Time
whoa,
off
whoa,
from the
whoa.
professional sector. So I
There
am
we go.
currently unpaid and an unpaid volunteer who's everywhere in town all the time. But in my prior life, I was a construction project manager who ran very large construction projects in the Boston, Cambridge area. Did a lot of budgeting, managing, peer reviews, and I equate a lot of the budget committee to a peer review where you see you are presented the budgets, and then you're a new set of eyes to look at it.
So
to
you
really
kind of
dig
had a
in.
volunteer
So for the past 10 years,
career.
my career that I don't do for a living because it doesn't pay much is just volunteer in the schools and sporting and activities. So I'm available to lots of people. I have the background. I just don't do it for a living right now.
Thank you very much. What you're doing is really important. You don't have to make an excuse for that. Jen, do you find that you have time to put in? It's a real job. I hope you all understand.
That's why it's not
how
for a
many
living. I still-
hours, right? How many hours the budget committee will take of your life and suck out of your family, et cetera. I think you all need to understand how much work that this job really is. And Jen, how many hours do you think that you did spend?
Oh gosh, I don't know if I could add it all up. I mean, there's a lot of pre-work that happens once you get the budgets that you need to. I think it's really important for budget committee members to do their homework prior to coming into meetings, as opposed to just showing up and letting other people do the work, right? So, I mean, on average, 2 to 4 hours a week when we're in budget season of pre-work. And then, of course, there's the weekly meetings, which is a solid 4 hours of your night. So do I have the time? Yes.
You do have the time. Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Corey?
Yeah, I have the time. I'm in a unique position where, for my job, I get to travel, but I also get to spend a lot of time in hotels. So that gives me a lot of time to do my homework and get that pre-work done prior to coming to the meeting. And I have
It's a roll your sleeves up kind of job, and some people have come in and just kind of dabbled. It's not one of those boards you can really dabble in, I don't believe. I'm on the Conservation Commission, and I'm kind of learning things as I go. There certainly isn't the pressure that you guys are going to feel on the Budget Committee. John, do you have that time for our town to go through those budgets with a fine-tooth comb?
Yeah, absolutely. So my job allows me to travel for work as well, but also work from home when I'm not traveling. So absolutely, have the time and committed to giving the time. And I'm a big believer in that pre-work and not just showing up and listening to what others have to say, but taking the time to dig in and understand what we're going to be talking about on a weekly basis.
Scott?
Absolutely. Good thing is my last child will be graduating from high school this year. So then all my work as far as, things with Jen on different sports leagues and things like that go by the wayside. And I think, one of the big differences, and I've mentioned the Facebook page before, but you'll see that I've actually gone ahead and started to do that work, presented some questions, presented some ideas. So when you talk about the people rolling up their sleeves, this is something that I've already done even before possibly getting elected. So I will continue that type of due diligence and continue to call out those things and field questions from the community as well, as I have been over Facebook and email around key things that they're caring about, and making sure that we're making good quality questions to be able to ask. Is something a state mandated or federal mandated spending? What is we need this in order to be able to provide a competitive landscape, or is it a nice to have?
And you have time to do that?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. Carrie?
I do. I am very familiar with the commitment required for this position. As I stated,
How many hours do you think you're spending?
I don't even want to think about it. It's a unpaid job, like you said. But I was also in a unique position this year as a chair, learning a position, a new role. There was a lot more learning going on there. Thank you, Cindy, for being available to help answer questions. A lot of it's how much you put into it. How serious are you? And digging into those line by line, reviewing the budget, it takes time. And I'm proud to say I actually can't recall that I missed a meeting in the past 6 years, even the special ones. I'm not going to say I never missed one, because somebody will pick the one that I managed to miss that I forgot. But I've made them. It's a commitment in our family. My husband schedules his work around that meeting. It's a known factor in our family. So, yes, I will be there.
That a girl. Glad to hear it. I think you all need to know that that's expected and requested. We've been left high and dry as a budget committee in the past, and it's definitely makes it difficult for everybody. Somebody's going to have to pick up your slack. And let's see here. We have a question is this from the page?
I think so.
For folks that followed the last budget committee process, what do you think worked well and not well? So you were in it. I'm actually going to start with Jen, because Jen has a commitment that I know she...
I'm good for a bit.
You're good for a bit?
Yeah.
Okay, good. I hope this is not going to get in the way. But for folks that followed it, what do you think worked well and what did not work well?
Yeah, so I think the town did a wonderful job of presenting us with their budget in a timely fashion.
Okay.
I think the school did not. So I feel like we were really, I'll be in trouble for that when I get home, I'm sure, but.
We're not going to mention it.
No, it's good. But I think we were very late in getting information from the school. I think the school would tell you the same thing.
Is there a way to move that information forward quicker?
Yeah, I think it was a process issue, and I hope that we don't see that again.
In speaking with them, I think it was an anomaly. Well,
Yeah,
knock on
well,
wood.
we haven't had that problem in the past. So,
Okay.
The other thing that I think worked really well is the makeup of the budget committee as it existed this year. We were very different people. You could have a very respectful debate and still shake each other's hand at the end of the night, right?
I
So,
like that.
I think I think this group of people right here is a very diverse, different group. We're all sitting up here smiling and nodding heads with each other You know, I think
Yeah, we're
I
really
think the
lucky.
partnership was really strong.
Okay. Corey, did you get a chance to know what was going on in the budget committee this year?
I did not, we just moved in, we were getting settled in during the budget season, so I wasn't involved or following the budget committee sessions at that
Okay.
point, so.
John?
Yeah, I would agree with what Jen said. I actually had a chance to talk with Andrew Cutter a couple of weeks ago when I had decided to do this.
I think we all talked to Andrew.
Probably, yeah. Yeah, just because I have had a chance to watch and listen, and even I interviewed about a year and a half ago and got a chance to meet some of the people that were a part of the committee. And actually, that was one of the things Andrew and I talked about was collaboration between the town, between the school board. That was something he'd share with me, was just kind of the timeline of the school budget coming forward. And one of the things that I'm a big believer in and proponent of is the collaboration between the town, between the school, between the budget committee. We have to work together to ensure that we're maximizing those dollars for everyone. These are all of our dollars we have to think of it as not just separate budgets and separate people fighting for dollars. These are all of our town's tax dollars, and how do we work together to collaboratively?
So that worked. You think
And
that-
absolutely, and I think one of the things was like what Jen said was the timeline piece of it. I think caused a little bit of strain. I think my background being in education, I hope that I can help be a voice and someone that can collaborate with folks on the school board to do anything we can to expedite that process moving forward.
Wonderful. Okay. Scott?
So I think as far as what worked well, was certainly, again, I'll bring up Andrew's name again. I think he comes extremely well prepared, going ahead and breaking certain departments down line by line, making it easy for people to be able to interpret, understand, but more importantly, he comes from a position of strength to be able to really question what is being put into the budget. I think what didn't work well over the last budget season is a lot of the conflict between both the school and the budget committee, and even within the budget committee. I think there were times that, conflict is healthy, but when it becomes combative, then at that point it just doesn't end up working. When you want to have conflict is around really both sides wanting to sit down and discuss all available options for a particular department or even a decision within the committee itself. And I think that there's still some work that needs to be done there, and that's where I think I can come in and help out.
Thank you. Carrie, what worked best?
What worked best? I definitely agree that the town budget went more smoothly. I think part of that is that there's a relationship, I think, that we were working on building between various members of the department heads, that we see the same people. And so some of us are very predictable in the questions we're going to ask, and so they know how to.
They're ready.
They're ready. They're like, I expected you to ask that question. I was ready for that answer.
I've got your numbers
Yeah,
here.
Exactly. So, and there was more of an open dialogue. The school we struggled with, and I think that was for situations and concerns outside of anybody's direct control. There were things that occurred that we couldn't predict. That's no direct fault of the school board and no fault of ours, but it was something that we all had to deal with.
You think as you progress, you'll be able to?
I'm hoping that
Predict more.
situation, and I understand what the situation was, and I don't anticipate it replicating itself. So my hope is that going forward, we all understand what happened.
Okay.
And
I'm gonna-
we move forward from it.
I'm gonna switch gears. You ready for me to switch gears?
Oh, no.
Everybody ready?
Be nice.
Okay. No, that'd be nice. We want to talk about needs and wants. When you're sitting down at the budget committee, and you're talking about needs versus wants, emotions get high, et cetera. Can you describe for me, Jen, what you think the difference is between a need and a want?
Yeah, I think that's a very complex question. I guess what I would say is I think you have to take away your personal feelings and experiences and really think about what is best for everyone, even when it may not positively impact you. I think anyone would describe a need as something that if we don't have it, there will be a consequence or a greater expense later down the road.
Okay.
And a want is a nice to have, and if we could swing it, let's make it happen.
Thank you. Corey?
It is somewhat complex, but there's kind of a cut and dry line. Like she said, if there's a need is something that we cannot conduct business, the town is going to have a hardship, or the school is not going to be able to function without that particular item or expense. Whereas a want, you know, it may make our lives easier and it may help down the road. It's something that we can do without and push off till another time when we have more money to allocate to that. And yeah, it's absolutely an emotional question that you need to take emotion out of too.
Yep, absolutely. John?
Yeah, I feel like Jen stole my answer to that question, but I would agree that, you know, a need is something.
You had to go first.
Yeah,
Somebody had to go.
A need is something that when I think about essential services in town, so we're talking about police, we're talking about fire, we're talking about essential school operations. Those are things that are needs. You know, wants are things that are nice to have. How do we, you know, what are things? How can we define things that are wants and really being able to differentiate needs and wants? But the most important part of that is not what I think is a need or want, and not what anyone up here individually thinks is a need or a want. What does the town and the people say is a need or a want? And so, again, just reiterating that, you know, I'm a big believer in that it's not about my personal interest or our individual personal interest.
Yep.
It's about representing the voice of the town and the people in the town.
Thank you, John.
So Diane, I think, you know, a lot of times in this town, we throw around our property values will go down if we don't do this. And we try to push things as a need when they're really a want. Going back to my opening statement, really taking a look at things and being able to say, look, is this something that is state or federal mandated? And I would even question some of those because I fear that there's some people that will go ahead and take a loose interpretation of state or federally mandated so that way they can keep their bucket of money. Those things need to be questioned. And then that whole idea in the middle there of the competitive services in this town. Let's be honest. I think I heard in a past meeting in one of the groups that somebody said, well, I don't want to become Franklin. Well, you know what? People also will live here because of easier commute to get to a job in Boston. They're not going to live in Franklin and commute down to Boston. So I think there's sometimes that those types of arguments need to be challenged, and you really need to look at that. What do we really need to offer in order to be able to provide a competitive landscape? And then the wants. And the great thing about the wants is, you know what? The beautification of this town with the What's Up page, there was a want of making sure that up by the power lines, it didn't look like garbage. And you know what? You guys went through and did a lot of work and were able to make that project happen without having to tap into and ask the taxpayers for money. So I think there's also a large group of people out there that will self-fund certain wants out there, but it just needs to be coordinated by somebody, and the work that you folks did was fantastic.
Thank you very much. Carrie?
So, I'm sorry, the need versus wants?
Needs versus wants. And can you give us an example of something that you personally wanted and was really close to a need? I'm going to make it harder for you.
Wanted, but really close to a need?
Well, you felt it was a need, but it might have been a want.
Oh, I was like, well, I felt the fire station, I felt it was a need, but some think are a want, sure.
Okay.
That's still very controversial among some people in town, I understand that.
So those needs and wants can be,
But
depending on who you are.
there is, I mean, I felt there was a compelling argument for the need, and there are definitely aspects of it that were wants, but then that's where compromise comes in, right? So we can keep trying to hammer it down to my specific only needs, and then it'll cost more in the long run because we'll be arguing about it for another 15 to 20 years. But yes, anybody who has watched knows that I argue in favor of asking. I try to identify those items that I believe truly are wants versus needs. And if a want is a compelling argument, I would suggest and have suggested in the past, use the warrant process. We need our town and our schools to stop being afraid of asking the voters directly.
I think that would definitely build a better relationship.
A lot of times we hear, but what if it fails? Well,
Then it
that's
failed.
our job. If we truly believe in those wants, then we need to be out there pounding the pavement and making the argument to convince people why these wants are important. And so just ask. Worst case, they say no, we try again. We refine our argument. We take into account the decisions and the things, and maybe we recalibrate what we think is truly a want. But ask. Don't be afraid of the process. Embrace it.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm going to start with you this time. What are your thoughts on a zero-based budget? Start at zero, build up, rather than a lot of the averaging that goes on in these budgets.
So-
and last year we did this, and
Right, so when I go through the budget, I love Andrew's worksheets and whatnot, but I don't use them primarily. I look through the binder and I go line by line. what have we spent? Does it make sense? Let's ask the question. So in my mind, I'm trending that way anyway. I don't try to say, well, we spent this, and oh, that increase looks normal. I say, well, why didn't we spend it? Well, why, does it make sense? Ask the questions. So, and I've said in the meetings before,
How do we get there to zero-based budgeting? Are you a good person to ask that?
it's gonna be, everybody brings their own philosophy on how to do it, right? So it's, the way I do it is I look line by line. Does each item make sense? And if not, let's ask the questions. Feel like I've developed a good relationship with a lot of the department heads in town, so I ask those
But
questions.
it's not a requirement, right? that
It's
they-
not, it's however, everybody approaches it from their own
What if we
perspective.
required that it was a zero-based budget?
I don't know that we
And that
could.
people came in, well, you can, because there are different strategies.
Right, but
Budget-
but I
different
don't know that I
companies
can.
require a
I don't know that I
zero-based
can
budget
dictate to
versus a.
Jen the process by which she should use to review the budget. But so,
No, but what if the budgets were presented to you as zero-based budgets, that they started up from the beginning, and what you're seeing is what they intend to spend this year, nothing to do with what happened last year, which was a different year. Do you think that could be required, or how do you feel about it?
I'd have to, in my mind, I feel that the town, for the most part, tries to, they don't say, we need this and add 5%. I believe that they do look into the numbers. I believe the school, when they go into their 8-hour budget process, in theory, when the intent is justify each number. I can't say how the process they use. My process for reviewing the budget is line by line. Do the numbers make sense? And if not, ask questions. And sometimes that means numbers go up, and sometimes that means numbers come down, and other numbers are, well, we don't need that anymore, so let's remove it.
Scott?
I completely support the zero-based budget. I think from a government standpoint, it does need to work more like a business that, you know what, coming up with a new fiscal year, you need to re-examine and not only come up with, okay, here's, starting from scratch, here's what I need, and then also, you know what, lay out your plan over the next 3 to 5 years. You know, explain how you're
Always
going
was
to go
part of the
ahead.
corporate structure I had to
Yeah, so
report
that
to
way
when I
you
took
have,
over.
you know what, things that need to be repaired, things that need to be replaced, you know, growth, decline. I feel like right now a lot of the budgeting is just based on somewhat reactive. You know, oh, all of a sudden, you know what, we need another kindergarten class because there's a whole bunch of kids. And like, you know, a lot of these discussions about, you know, well, we need to add teachers here, but then there's no talk about some of the classes that are extremely low enrollment. So I think that starting from zero, and again, going back to the 3 buckets that I talked about before, would assist those departments in when they come to the budget committee to present their case. Then at that point, it's based on foundation, not just, well, you know what, the fees on this goes up about 10% every year. I posted up on my Facebook page about the fact that, you know what, most of the town budget went up 8%. Like, name me a person in the private sector that's getting an 8% raise year over year. It just doesn't happen. So you need to start breaking it down and start from scratch at zero to make sure that if that 8% is there, then it has to be really justified.
John?
Yeah, so I mentioned this earlier, my background, having worked in 2 different school districts. Both of those school districts, I had an opportunity to manage multi-million-dollar IT budgets. And the second district I was in, when we actually went into the district, our budgeting was based on just essentially adding the cost of inflation every year, without really justifying what our expenditures were and what the previous year's expenditures were. The last 3 or 4 years that we were there, we actually went to a zero-based budget. For me, it was the first time I had actually done that, but now I have the experience, the understanding of what that looks like, but also the value that provides to the overall budget. Because our IT budget for a school district of 20,000 students, we were a drop in the bucket of what the overall budget was. However, we were forced to defend our expenditures, to lay out a plan, like Scott said, and to be able to articulate that not only to our bosses, to the superintendent, but to the community and to the school board, I think really provided understanding and rationale as to why we needed those funds, how those funds were to be used, and how they connected to a long-term plan specifically within our department. So I've seen it work, I've been a part of it, and I think it can be successful.
Thank you, John. Corey?
Yeah, I'm with Scott and John. I think a zero-based budget is an excellent idea. It gives you it's a little more labor-intensive, it takes a little more time, but the results are definitely better. Once things get in the budget and you start adding, like I said, 10% on top of every year, just because it's easy and that's what you expect to be the rate of inflation or the cost of items. The budgets get out of control quickly and easily, and when you have budgets that are bigger than what's needed, you get a lot of waste involved. So zero-based budget gives you an opportunity to
To start from fresh.
start from fresh every year.
Jen, your thoughts?
Yeah, so I feel like the town and the school are pretty close to zero-based budgeting as it is.
Okay.
I don't think that the town or the school creates a budget and says, hey, we're just going to slap on 10% or 2% or whatever it may be. They both groups go line by line, just like we do as budget committee members. So I'm in favor of it, and I think we're pretty close to doing that. I'm curious if the person who asked the question might be talking about level funding versus zero-based budgets,
Perhaps.
which is kind of two different things. And, you know, Andrew presents us with these spreadsheets, which are awesome. To Carrie's point, I use those as a point of reference, but you can't always use a 3-year average, right? Because there are
Oh, no,
other
you can't, but
factors
it does show you, it lets
It
things
does, but
point.
it's a balance between,
Yeah.
as Carrie stated, looking at.
I think when you see things like that aren't explained as a community member, like the $550,000 that we were spending for the school, now that was over, and then that money kind of just was absorbed back into the budget, and the community didn't understand. Where did that money go? We're not paying for our high school anymore, and that's a lot of money. And now it's gone, and now our budget went up again anyway. I think those kind of things are like, okay, yikes. You know, if we started at the beginning and said why, from what my explanation was that the teachers' benefits went astronomically through the roof and absolutely impacted that number. But as a community member, I think we look at what happens in the budgets and go, wow, you know, where did that money go? And the same thing is the question about the balance fund,
Unassigned fund balance?
thank you, sir. The unassigned fund balance, you know, you see that money is just sitting there, and is it being put back into the community? And we start to worry as community members what's happening with that. So that's where we're talking about from a zero-based budget, is like, all of a sudden, shouldn't that have gone away? You know, and maybe it did, but as community members, we elect people to take care of those things. Unless something big happens, we may not be looking. We have a lot of really good questions that are coming in over the web. One is, where do you lean? Are you more conservative or more liberal? Carrie?
Conservative.
Fiscal conservative.
Fiscally conservative.
Totally conservative.
Fiscally conservative.
Love it. Look at that. So those all are things that should hopefully take our needs and our wants and balance them, and perhaps be able to have impact. Who here will have kids in the school system next year? Everybody but Scott, who's going to have college bills, perhaps?
Emptiness.
Perhaps college bills and an empty nest.
That's right.
Which I just got one of those, so don't think it's going to last. They
That's
come
okay.
back. Okay. Do you think that you can be impartial either way when it comes to the budget, when you have kids that are going to be impacted by not getting these wants?
Yes.
Jen? You've had to be.
So, and I mean, I referenced it earlier, but I do kind of want to bring it up because I think it's
Yeah.
important for people to know. So my husband is on the school board. He is the school board chair. I don't know if he will be again. And people have questioned my ability to be impartial towards the school budget because of that. I would state that over the course of the past 4 years, I think I've proven time and time again that Brian and I are two completely different people.
I actually asked a lot of people that question, Jen, and you may be surprised that I did, but I did ask that question, and I actually did hear that. So
Yeah. So
I think that
I mean, I cut from the school budget all the time and come home to sleeping on the couch sometimes. So
I actually
so-
heard that too. Somebody may have mentioned
it's
that
not
to
a
me.
lie. I can tell you a couple funny stories. So I share that because I think it's important for people to understand.
Yep.
I want to be transparent, but I've stated from the beginning of this session, I have 4 kids, 3, one in GMS, one in LMS, one in CHS, and one that has graduated. I don't make decisions on the budget based on my kids and their experience.
Okay, thank you very much, Corey.
Yeah, I have 5 kids as well, 3 in GMS and 2 in LMS. But you have to take the emotion and your children out of the decisions. You're making decisions for the money of the citizens of the town. It's everybody's money, and not just mine. Of course, I want my kids to have the best possible education and everything they want or need to succeed. But you know, it's the responsibility, you know, on the budget committee is to manage the money that you're given efficiently, and you know, if they don't get some of their wants, then, you know, I mean, you just talk to my kids today. If we go to the store, they have a lot of wants. I'm not afraid to say no.
So there's your allowance. So how do you feel about it now? John?
Yeah, so I have Abby is in first grade and my youngest is in preschool. So I have two younger kids who obviously, we plan on being a part of the school system for a long, long time. I've stated time and time again, my background is education. It has been. And certainly that's a passion of mine and something that I believe is vital and essential to a thriving community. That being said, these are tax dollars that we have to look across the entire town and across all of our services. I am a big believer that education plays a big part in our success and not only the success of our kids and our town, but it's what's going to help attract new families in. We actually moved into New Hampshire a couple of years ago. My wife had grown up here, but one of the things that was really important to us was looking at high-quality school systems, and Litchfield was one of the higher-quality school systems that we looked at when we were looking at this community. All of that being said, education is important to me. It's important to my family, but it's not about my personal interest. It's about what's best for the town, and just like these two stated, it's taking a holistic look at the budget. What are the priorities, and what are the needs, and what do the people of the town say are our priorities and needs, and removing my personal interest from that.
Thank you. Scott, I'm going to ask you a different question.
All right.
Your kid's leaving. You got a college bill. You're going to rape and plummet. Yes, thank you. Rape and pillage the school budget
No.
because you don't have kids in the system
No,
anymore?
I think so.
Okay.
I come from a good
I think if
perspective.
it's fair to ask them, I
Yeah,
think this is a
absolutely.
fair thing to ask you.
I have one daughter that's in college, and then I have one son that's going to be graduating this year and going into the Army. So taking a look at it not only from, okay, what do you have in terms of like college preparation by the school district, but then also, workforce side of things. So I think
Yeah, that's a
one of the parts is that I can bring a perspective of, okay, we thought all of these things were great with my daughter. Well, you know what, then when you actually get to college and a lot of the things that were hyped up as far as must-haves for the budget really aren't must-haves, because then that doesn't give you what you need in college. I think a lot of the AP classes, for example, I think there was some conflict with those towards her senior year and things of that nature. So I think, there's a perspective that you can look back on, not only from CHS, LMS, GMS, but you can look back and be able to say, okay, this is
really
what we
did
thought,
need
but this isn't the way it works in the real world.
I love that. That's a great answer.
Thank you.
I joined Portrait of a Graduate at the high school as a program that's going on, and they asked me to join that as a community member, and I joined. And one of the things that I said to them was, I'm really interested to hear what you all have to say about the educational things that we want to have these kids have, but there's a whole group of trades out there that are not having enough people in them. So not only is it the people that are going off to college that need to be catered and groomed, but these people that are going to be going into the trades, because it's so important to be able to have plumbers and electricians and people that can drive trucks, and all these people are just kind of going away. But that's my own thing, and it was really interesting.
Yeah.
What isn't as important now. But, Kerry.
No, I don't feel that my children's participation in the public schools will impact my ability to review the budget in an objective manner. The budget committee's obligation is to represent all taxpayers. The school board's obligation is to advocate on behalf of the students and the families that are affected. That's their job. Our job is to represent everybody in town. So the students are already covered by one board. It's our job to represent everybody as a whole.
Okay, let's see here. With a school budget of 23 million and a town of 7 million, do you think?
7 million. What?
Town budget of 7 million.
A town budget.
7 million.
I thought you were saying 7 million people in town. That's a lot.
Do you think spending is too high, too low, or just right, Jen?
It's an impossible question to answer. I'm going to say I think spending is always too high, right? I think nobody wants to see their tax bill go up. I think we have an obligation to be responsible in our spending.
Okay,
Switzerland.
too high, too low, or just right?
I'm on
Non-answer, answer?
I'm on the too high side. I'm with Jen. That's part of the reason I'm here is because I want an opportunity to look at the spending and see where we can save some money and keep the taxes from increasing at the rate they are.
John?
Yeah, I'd say with labeling myself fiscally conservative, it's never about continuing to increase taxes year over year. It's where can we look for opportunities to save dollars. That being said, the school system is one of the largest employers within the town, and so how do we continue to acknowledge that while also keeping costs under control and not continuing to grow year over year, managing those needs versus the wants?
Okay.
Diane, as I had mentioned before, I charted out as far as from 2009 until now, and there's been a drastic increase since 2015 of the overall tax rate, so definitely too high. I think we need to get back to the 2013, 2014, 2015, when it was a little bit more level set. We also have to keep in mind, as Carrie had mentioned, where for all people in town, if you take a look at the people that are 55 and over within this community, that's 25% of the population. And then if you look at the people that are from, 1 to 19, that's another 25% of the population.
People are
People at
staying.
55 and over are not in a situation where they can sit there and continue to watch their tax rates go up year after year after year. And you know what? We need to challenge some things and be able to make sure that we're investing wisely, but keeping an idea of what everybody can afford. That's overall what the role of the budget committee is to do. The departments figure out what do they want, the school board or the town figures out what they need, and then we are tasked with what can we afford.
Thank you very much. Carrie?
I
know nobody's going to say too high.
think they're too high.
I mean too low. Nobody's going to say they're too low. Nobody that wants to get elected is going to say they're too low.
No, I routinely think that the budgets are too high, but we also have to recognize that there are 9 people at the table, and so it's going to be a compromise. I'm going to think it's too high, somebody's going to think it's just right, and somebody might think, well, I think you're hurting a department. So how can we come to a reasonable compromise? So am I psyched with the school budget that we're putting forward? I think there are absolutely wants in there but the alternative is to support a budget that I think is even higher. So I can continue to try to argue, all I can do is continue to try to make my case and argument.
Can you go on about that for just a second, the default budget? Can you talk on the default budget for a little bit? It is higher,
Yes. So,
considerably higher. We vote down the,
yep. So one of the things I found fascinating when I moved to New Hampshire is the default budget. Where I grew up, if it failed, it failed. I remember my school district went until August and trying 3 times to get a budget through. So the default budget to me was a very fascinating item, where if the proposed budget fails, then you have a default budget that is calculated. And the default budget is intended to be the previous year's expenses adjusted for contracts and removal of one-time expenses. And so there's a calculation and a formula, and that is to set should everything fail, this is what you get. And this year, the default budget is higher than the proposed budget.
is it ever lower? I don't think I've ever seen a default budget lower.
It has been lower in the past.
Okay.
Sometimes they're very close, and then sometimes, like this year, it's significantly higher. But I also believe that the proposed budget there's additional positions in there that I believe ought to have been a warrant article. But I made my case, I tried, and I couldn't sway enough
Well, there
votes.
was something that came through, I know, as somebody that was talking to people at the Litchfield Food Mart and at Romano's or Rocco's or wherever I was, and we were talking about the new the new kindergarten class that's up for a warrant article, but yet everything to fund that class was put into the budget. Now, that's since been moved out, is that correct?
It's out of the budget. It is out of the budget.
It's out of the budget.
Out of the proposed
'Cause
budget.
that was something as a taxpayer I was furious about. I was like, oh my gosh, how can you put this into the budget that I have to vote on? And then we haven't even decided whether or not we're going to do the classroom. So I think that we were probably pretty happy that came back out.
So, but like I said, we have to understand that not everybody's going to be in lockstep. It is a wide variety of views and different ideas coming towards the budget. And so, am I always happy with the budget? Not even close. But is it the best we're going to get? I'd like to think that we debated, and most of us can feel comfortable with the final outcome. And then we leave it to the voters to decide. That's the beauty of the process.
Thank you. It's a lot of work. I really do appreciate everything that you've done for it.
I really do love every moment
I
of
do
it.
appreciate it. Scott, looking from the outside in, where do you think that money could be saved?
I think there's many areas that we can take a look at. I think in terms of, some of the transportation's probably number 1 on the list.
Huge, isn't it?
I'll tell you what, one of the final straws that broke the camel's back as far as me running was the whole transportation and pay to play. Now, pay to play for both athletics and co-curricular. the fact that the budget committee said, hey, this is something that we should explore because the transportation budget is just getting far too large. It's $1.1 million right
And I
now.
think it was like 85,000 or 75,000 for that type of.
Yeah, I mean, it just,
Curricular.
that was a,
The co-curricular,
Yep.
it's like $75,000 a year.
so then I sit there and I watch the school board meeting, and basically it's, yeah, you know what, we're not gonna talk about that. It's like, guys, we're in a situation where, you know what, it's getting large enough that you need to have a discussion about it. You know, we spend $250,000 on athletics. You know what? People have paid for their kids to play youth sports, travel sports, AAU sports, all of these types of things. And now all of a sudden we're just gonna just let that budget continue to grow because we wanna just keep having more and more. At some point, somebody, again, has to be the budget committee to put their foot down and say, you know what? I know that's what you guys want, but we can't afford it. You know, I mean, if your kid wanted to sit there and play every AAU sport out there, but you don't have enough income to support that, you have to tell them no at some point. And I don't feel like no is given enough of an answer, and no with authority.
John, is there something that you've looked at that you think that,
Yeah, I think building off Scott's answer, you know, I'm not a fan of pay to play. I've seen value as a former high school coach with my kids, with kids that I've coached, that extracurriculars, co-curriculars, and athletics provide well-rounded educational opportunities for students. I mean, we're just talking about that. It's not about necessarily the content they learn. It's that entire educational experience. And while I agree with Scott that there could be opportunities to look at transportation to potentially save cost, you know, when we look at extracurriculars or athletics, I think one of the places we have to look at is fundraising, sponsorships, boosters. There's other sources of revenue that I think can help offset some of those potential costs that may come out of the budget. I also think taking a look at shared services, shared purchasing power that we have as a town. How does the school and the town leverage, you know, all of our collective tax dollars, and we're not purchasing a service or a good here for the town and a separate one for the school without thinking about how we consolidate all of those together. So I think there's opportunities in several places like that.
Corey?
I'm kind of on the fence on pay to play, leaning towards no. I think that.
How about any other ways to save money? I think we kind of talked about that. Nothing that you've looked at right now that's
nothing that
glaring at you?
You're right.
Okay.
So there's not a specific area or department that I would say, I think we need to cut here. I think our role as budget committee members is to look at every line of every budget every year and treat it individually and make the reductions that are necessary for that year.
Okay, thank you very much. And then this is from the web also, and it's not really anything, although the budget committee isn't just expenses, it is revenues that are coming in too. It's revenues and
Everything
expenses.
impacts the budget, right?
Yep. Doesn't really, do you have any innovative sources of revenue that are untapped? Do you have any ideas of any?
I mean, you know, I think industry in town, but I think that doesn't necessarily fall in our purview, right? So
Yeah,
we get a budget that we review. If the town chooses, I'm in support of there being additional ways for businesses to come into town and still maintain the quaint community of Litchfield.
okay, Corey?
Yeah, you know, absolutely. I think that there's room for a little more commercial in revenue in the community without disrupting the small town feel. But like Jen said, being a part of the budget committee, you're not. That's outside of the purview. It's not part of what we do. I mean,
Right.
we're more into, you know, deciding how that revenue is divided up amongst the other departments in the school.
John?
Yeah, I mean, I grew up in a small town in Kentucky. I love the small town feel that Litchfield provides for us and for our family. I don't want to see that go away. However, I do think there are small potential opportunities for industry growth to provide additional revenue. I also think taking a look at state, federal dollars, looking at grant opportunities, wherever possible, wherever we can find additional sources of funding. And it doesn't necessarily have to mean expanding business, because I think any of us sitting up here, you know, want to see us grow to something across the river or something north or something south. We want to maintain who we are as a town. Mm-hmm. Small growth is okay, but where can we look at those additional opportunities and supports from the federal, from the state, from grants to help offset increased taxes?
And John David brings up a great point. The grants are huge. I've worked with people that in the past have run, their own part-time business, going out there and helping organizations and schools and towns find these grants, write the grant proposals and things of that nature. And I think that's where, true, it is not part of the budget committee process, but where I have a.
You can look to see if it's there, and if it's not there, you can inquire why not.
And you know what? I have a sales background, so therefore, if other departments need some help as far as how to go ahead and position and present to either businesses or particular areas that are offering grants, then I can also provide those services and be able to work with different departments to be able to make that happen.
Can I ask a question? Does the high school students still pay to take the bus?
No, they
don't anymore.
eliminated that.
Got rid of that and parking fees a couple years ago.
I thought there was still a parking
No,
fee.
there's still a parking
Is
fee.
there still
Parking fee, because parking's a privilege, but taking the bus apparently is not.
What do I
Okay.
know?
I think we also, they paid for years,
Right.
the high school students to take the bus. And then a great revenue idea was that we were gonna start charging the students $100 a year to park their cars, which used to be $5. So I think we need to be kind of careful with those revenue streams from still the taxpayers. I just
It all comes from, because eventually you get topped out, right? It's the same people who
It's
pay
the
the
same people that
parking,
pay-
who
yeah,
pay,
the
who
re- the
buy the
taxes,
baseball
but-
cards and the football cards and all the popcorn and,
So Jay has a long question from the web, and he's gonna read it for us.
Write it down on the card. A big Sharpie.
I got this
All right,
one.
all right.
Okay, so, I think this might be directed for the folks that were on the budget committee.
All right.
Maybe, maybe not, but it
go.
says, one thing I felt was a hurdle for the budget committee this past year was having some line items presented to them from the school budget where the answer was, quote unquote, we are bound by contract. Do the budget candidates feel that they should have some say in those contracts that they are being bound to?
I would
Diane?
love to, but no.
Oh, go this way, yeah.
What?
Did you hear the question?
No, I thought you were gonna do this question.
He
I
just
was looking
did.
for the next one. I know, but you were gonna ask.
All right,
I would love to, but no, I don't think that falls in our scope. of
okay, so the question is do budget committee member, there's a lot of parts of the budget that were bound by contract.
Contract, I
And the
did hear
question
that
is,
part.
should the budget committee be involved with
Negotiations.
contract negotiations?
Ooh,
No, I don't believe it's our responsibility.
Corey, that's a good question, though.
Yeah, I don't think so either. I think that the contracts are negotiated by the boards and the departments, and that's their responsibility.
Yeah, I think that's the responsibility of the school board. I think it's okay for us to ask questions, but that's outside of our purview.
So the answer would be no. I don't think that the budget committee should be involved. However, I think, as I mentioned before, people do need to question in terms of, is it really contractual or are you just hiding it as contractual? And then second of all, the budget committee should be advising the school and the town in terms of, before they get into the negotiations, here's what you should expect as far as spending, so that way they can negotiate properly and know where that tipping point is before they get into a contract.
Okay.
So I agree that the budget committee does not have a say necessarily when it comes to the budget in some aspects. It doesn't mean that a budget committee person couldn't sit in and it's like a advisory, just sitting in and understand, because a lot of times we get a summary sheet. These are the things that have changed in the contract. Well, that doesn't give me necessarily the 30 to 40 pages of what exactly are the terms and agreements that have been hashed out. And sometimes I'd feel more comfortable maybe voting in favor of something if I knew, well, how far apart were you at the start and who gave up how much to get here? And then I'd have a better appreciation maybe of the final agreement. But a one-page, two-page summary that just highlights, well, this was the copay and this is now. Well, what was asked for? How much did we agree? We have now the capital planning
interesting thought.
committees, and we have a budget committee person that sits in to basically listen, bring back information. I've always thought it'd be fascinating to have a budget committee person sit in. I mean, it would be up to the school board and the town to include it, but if I had
As a liaison.
no, not even necessarily as liaison, just so when it comes up, I can say, you know what, they really did give a lot. This really is a good deal. But from my perspective, if I'm just seeing a summary, I don't know that that's a great deal.
Yeah, I often feel like, yeah.
I'm like,
blinders.
I'm just taking your word for it. And
No, I don't think legally we can.
well, I don't know, but I'm just saying from a budget committee.
It is very contractual. It is very legal.
Like it's a union negotiation. I don't think that would be open
They
to
won't let us play.
non-bargaining
You're not allowed
It
to play.
just, it'd be something worth interesting
right.
to explore if it could even be done.
Okay, I think we're at final comments, and we're really close to on time. Jen, you want to close up and your vote for me because?
Oh, gosh.
Do you want me to start down here?
No, it's good. Carrie's like, oh, she gets to go first this time.
She's gonna steal all my words, though.
So Jen Burke, again, running for re-election to the Budget Committee. I am very actively involved within our community. I feel like my prior history on the Budget Committee, as well as my professional experience, make me a really good candidate for the role. I think that part of my job in the role that I have today professionally is all about influence, right? So I don't have any direct reports, but I have to influence the people that I support to make good decisions. I think I can bring that to the Budget Committee as I have for the past 4 years, and I really hope for your vote.
Thanks very much, Jen, for everything that you've done so far for the town.
Thank you.
Corey?
Hi, I'm Corey Flint, and running for the Budget Committee, and I just looking for the opportunity to serve the town and to become a member, a more involved member in the community. I bring a lot to the table. I think I'm a fiscally conservative person that I want the town to do well, to grow, and to maintain as the small town feel. But I also want to keep the expenses and the taxes and so forth from going up. I'm just here to serve you as the community, and to try to help manage your money and mine as well, and make sure it's being spent correctly and well.
Thanks very much for coming up and taking your time to run and to volunteer and to want to be part of the town. Thank you very much, Corey, and welcome to Litchfield. John?
Yeah, John David Son, running for Budget Committee. For me, it's really about giving back to the community, to serving the town and the citizens, and providing a voice, providing their voice to this entire process and everything we've been talking about. I strongly believe that my background and experience, having gone through budgeting processes year over year, having had to make tough decisions when it came to cutting expenses and being able to not articulate and defend a budget, it provides me an opportunity to bring that here to the Budget Committee and to the town. And again, I'll reiterate it. It's not about representing myself, my personal interest. It's about what's best for the town and how we maximize those tax dollars for every citizen.
Thank you very much. And thank you for coming forward to run for office. We do appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Scott?
Thank you, Diane. So Scott Taylor, I think I'll close with an example that benefited the town to be able to get you to understand as far as who I am and how I work. Many years ago, I was with a group of 2 other guys, and we decided that, lacrosse was a good idea in town. Within 6 months, we were able to launch the program and also be able to balance the fact that, people, in order to take a leap of faith in lacrosse, also needed to have the ability to spend $200-300 in equipment in addition to the fees for us to go ahead and launch a program. The work that we did there as far as being able to get that program launched now brings in the high school one of the largest groups in terms of sports activities within the town, and that was just less than 10 years ago. So being able to understand what people can afford and being able to push back on what do we absolutely positively need in order to get the program going, and then what do we need in order to grow the program, those are the types of things I've brought to the town in the past, and I'll bring the same type of work to the Budget Committee.
Thank you very
Thank you.
much, and thanks for running. We really appreciate you coming forward. Carrie?
Hi, my name is Carrie Douglas, and I am running for re-election to the Budget Committee. But first, I'd like to thank Diane and Pete and Jay and our wonderful LCTV people for providing this opportunity. After hearing how you used to vote, I'm glad we have an opportunity to actually have some informed voters and we make a good decision.
It's not good to just look at the names and decide what's best? Fine. I wanted to get faces to the
So I
names.
appreciate the efforts that we have here to reach out to the voters so we can make informed decisions.
Very nice.
But I truly enjoy this town. I grew up in a small town, and so did my husband, and we love the character here and want to continue to preserve it. I also want to ensure that those who've been here for a long time can continue to afford to live here. It's not just about the town, it's not just about the school. We're all a community, and we all need to work together. My background is construction management, but there's a lot of budgeting involved. I've been on this committee since 2014, served as vice chair and chair. So there's a lot of good experience there, relationships that have been formed between the various departments, so there would be some continuity and consistency. And I will continue to work to ensure that we are good fiscal stewards. There's a lot of money in our taxes that are spent every year, and taxpayers need to understand and support what expenses those are covering. I'm always around in town and happy to answer questions, whether on the field or in the schools.
In the van?
On the phone. One of the benefits to being a full-time volunteer in town is that I'm very accessible. So please feel free to reach out at any point in time. Facebook, email, on the field. Please don't hesitate to stop in and say hi, ask a question, give me your mind. So I do ask for your vote next Tuesday, and I look forward to seeing people come out. Hopefully the weather's nice, but if it's not, we'll still be there.
Thank you very much for everything you've done for our town.
I appreciate
You all are just really make our town look good just by everything that you do and by showing up and wanting to be part of it. And I want to thank LCTV, Russ and Matt for filming us today. And Jay, I'm going to turn it over to you. I think we're done. Good job, everybody.
I think we are, and wanted to thank you, Diane, for putting this together. She did most of the homework involved, and she called all types of people, did a lot of research. And then just wanted to echo what you said. Thank you to LCTV, Russ and Matt back there, and Rob Fay. And for those of you that don't know, all of the town meetings and all videos related to that are up on Litchfield TV YouTube channel and Litchfield LCTV Facebook page as well.
So you can see all those meetings.
You can see them all.
Yep.
That's it.
Thank you
Pete's
very
gonna
much,
wind us up.
everybody, and thank you for watching us. I'm done.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.